Thank you, thank you. Good morning and great to be here at Interop. I love some of those quotes. I love the Iger quote, the riskiest thing to do is maintain the status quo. And in so many ways today, our conversation will be about how we see that status quo being changed in a fundamental and profound way. From VMware, we say thank you for the hospitality to participate here at Interop. And this is my first time ever having the opportunity to give a keynote here. So thank you so much for that. And as we're in just a dramatic shifting sands of the technology industry today, the question at hand for our discussion is, what's the best path forward? And we see this as the most critical time in the history of IT in over 30 years. And I've described it as tectonic shifts that are underway as we move from this period, right, of the client-server era to the mobile cloud era of computing. And as we think about that, overall IT budgets are nominally flat, right? And with that, if the budget is flat and I need to invest a whole bunch in creating this new environment for mobile cloud, where does it come from? By saving money in my existing client server and mainframe environments. And this puts enormous pressure on IT and how to accomplish both of those simultaneously. Save money here so I can invest and build tomorrow. And against that, simply put, the status quo ain't going to get it done. We need to make some fundamental changes. A new approach is required. And we think about that new approach as very simple. It's a software-defined future. And this means that we need to make a radical shift from the hardware-defined environment that we have today, where protocols and scripts and expensive and manual operations are the dictum of how we build and operate our data centers today. And tomorrow, the path is the software-defined enterprise of the future, where we build an environment that is far more agile, that is software-driven, that hardware is standardized, and through that, we use technologies that allow us to move that intelligence and that operational capability into the software layer that allows for transformation of economics and operational models. The world's finest data centers are operated in a software-defined manner today. And against it, right, it changes the nature of IT, where you're struggling through these manual processes or enabling to keep up an automation that runs at the speed of the business. And this is the juncture that we are at as an industry, the juncture that you are at as specialists in this area of the software-defined versus the hardware-defined future. Now, as we think about the software-defined data center, we see it as these four fundamental elements represent what's required to build the software-defined future. First, compute. And this is where VMware emerged from, and the core technology that we drove, creating this virtual machine. And our drive there is to virtualize the rest of the applications. Today, somewhere between 70 and 80% are virtualized. Virtualize the rest and keep on that journey. But then take those same principles of virtualization and apply them to storage, right? Apply them to networking. Deliver that through a layer of management and automation, and take those same principles of abstract pool and automate and apply them across all elements of the data center. And this is how you build and operate a modern data center today. And this week has been a great week for us at VMware. We're delighted. The work that we did in storage virtualization with vSAN has received 2 awards here, Best of Interop and the People's Choice Award at Interop, and we're so grateful for that. We just GA'd the product less than a month ago and receiving 2 awards. We also received a Best of Interop award for our VMware vCloud hybrid service. So as my first time here, what a warm welcome to be able to receive these on behalf of VMware. We say thank you to Interop. Now, as we come to our discussion today, we really want to zero in. This is Interop. We want to zero in the networking discussion for today. And let's take a closer look at this. Against network virtualization, we launched VMware NSX, the virtualization platform for the network, at VMworld in San Francisco in August of last year. It's built to support any application so new or old applications, any cloud management system, work across a heterogeneous view of hypervisors and across any networking hardware. No dependency on any hardware level. NSX is revolutionizing the network operations and computing. Just like ESX in 2004 began a revolution, NSX in 2013 is continuing that revolution in the networking space. So the idea of network virtualization, like ESX, is very simple. Right? You start with a set of network infrastructure, just like you have today. It's surrounded by a set of servers that you have today, server racks. And on top of those server racks, you then have, hypervisors and virtual switches. Taking advantage of those hypervisors and virtual switches, we create a network hypervisor. Just like the virtual machine was the hypervisor for computing, we create a network hypervisor. And on top of that network hypervisor, we then establish virtual networks. Leveraging those virtual switches and VMs, we establish a virtual network. And that virtual machine environment, that virtual network, has the same operational characteristics that VMs had. Right? It allows us to create networks in seconds. It allows us to save them, delete them, restore them, just like we do for VMs today. And it's not just the network, it's not just switching and routing, but it's all the other services that the network would provide as part of that virtual network overlay as well. Firewalls, load balancers, ACL. So it's not just switching functions, it's all of those other services. And you've created this essentially overlay network, just like the virtual machine overlay for computing. Now, since we've launched this, we've had incredible response, and it's just been amazing. And let me just show a brief video from VMworld that had Citi, eBay, and GE, and what they saw as the value of network virtualization. If you could roll the video.
Citi being a global financial services company, and our tagline is Citi never sleeps, which really means IT never sleeps. And to deliver that scale of a service, requires a lot of investment in the data center infrastructure. And we've already virtualized over 50% of our server infrastructure, and that goes beyond even x86 infrastructure, includes our other system architectures. So the next logical step really in carrying the promise of virtualization, throughout the data center is to tackle the network.
What network virtualization offers us is three things. One is it simplifies our physical infrastructure. Second is it actually gives us a programmatic API to deal with the network. And third is it gives us agility. And by the way, we didn't have to make any change to the physical infrastructure. And this has been awesome, and it's been a wonderful partnership with VMware.
As we've gotten further into this, we aggressively virtualize all of our application tiers, and that has reached orders of magnitude of performance and speed for the company. And as we've gotten further into automation, we've seen that the network itself is still in the physical world. It's still a bottleneck to that process. So we see network virtualization as the ability to apply the same technologies, right, the same automations to that process, and ultimately deliver the speed that the business is looking for.
So, if we had three brands, three companies to represent in launching this, I couldn't have thought of three better ones. But since then, since August, we've continued to have just tremendous positive response from customers. 3 of the 5 top investment banks, many of the world's leading brands, right, are now participating in some level of prototype or production deployments. And literally, as I see hundreds of customers a quarter, every one of them includes a conversation on where that customer is on their journey to network virtualization. But it's not just that we have customers from VMworld, we have customers that we're talking about, but we have a couple of them on stage today. So what I'd like to hear is 2 customers on stage. First is Nexon, and we have Daryl Dugan, the leader in online gaming, and Rick from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So please join me in welcoming Rick and Daryl to the stage. Very good, very good. Now, the USDA, right, founded in 1862 by Abraham Lincoln. I mean, you were like the bedrock of society.
Been around a long time.
Right? And then we got this wild, crazy gaming company that was founded out of Korea. What on earth could these two guys have in common? Networking.
Absolutely.
NSX. There we go. Right, the unifying fabric of the world, right? NSX. So, let's just get started. Rick and Daryl, maybe, Daryl, if you could start. Why virtualize the network? What drove you in this direction?
Well, Pat, our business is ever changing and making greater demands upon us, and they wanted an Amazon AWS-like service within the business. And so the only way we could move those services closer to the business was NSX, with the agility and the speed that it gave us.
And how about you, Rick?
Well, and we're not actually so dissimilar. I mean, in the era of constrained budgets and data center consolidation, we need to be fast and agile as well to support our customers, which range from farmers across the great nation of the United States, or also forest fighters. So, I'm sorry. So speed and agility are the keys to that success, and that's what SDN brings us.
So speed, agility, efficiency. So any surprise benefits that you've seen so far, Rick, from your NSX deployments?
Yes, absolutely. We've been using NSX now for about 18 months, and almost daily we find new ways that we can leverage moving the network into software. And I don't think that we've tapped even half of what we're going to discover as we continue to go forward.
And Daryl, right? It's more than just the technology, it's also the people as well.
People are very important, Pat. I mean, being a CCIE myself and working with network engineers and systems engineers, to realize the benefit that we all have to change and evolve because of what NSX and the software-defined data center is doing, network is doing for us. It's amazing.
So you're a CCIE.
I am a CCIE.
Right, so how many of you are CCIEs or managed CCIEs out there? Yeah, go ahead, raise your hand. Yeah, or manage them, or you're the network decision makers. I mean, these are your guys. And you guys went through a fundamental transformation as you moved from this world of protocols and hardware to a new domain of network virtualization to think about that project differently. So, maybe any final thoughts, Daryl and Rick, for the audience?
I'd say to all my colleagues, it's time to change or die.
Rick?
Absolutely. Software-defined networking is something I've been seeing coming for a while, and I'm really glad that it's here. I think it's going to be more disruptive to data center technology than even virtualization of Windows and Linux boxes just over a decade ago.
Change or die, network virtualization. Thank you very much.
NSX. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. And you just heard firsthand drivers behind network virtualization. This from Daryl, this idea of the speed and agility, apps and services to keep up in this dynamic environment. From Rick, the economics, the efficiency requirement to simply be able to perform their job in constrained environments. But the third, and maybe the most important reason that I wanted to touch on today is security. And let's talk about that a little bit further, because we know that security in this area of cloud and software-defined data center is, a very challenging picture. And if we think about the budgets, IT spend nominally flat, but security spend is exploding, and thus becoming a larger portion of the spend in the IT budget. But against that, security breaches is the only thing growing faster than security spend. And something in this picture is fundamentally wrong, because if we're spending more and we're falling further behind, something is fundamentally broken. And to look at that just a little bit more carefully, it is my pleasure to introduce on stage Martin Casada, VMware CTO of Networking and Security, and the co-founder of SDN OpenFlow, the guy who started this whole thing. Please join me in welcoming Martin Casada. Martin, it is great to have you here today. So, and again, the founder of SDN with Nick and team, and just delight to have you as our networking CTO. But today, we're talking about security, and you were really born out of the security industry.
Yeah, that's right, actually. So I used to work for the government in the intelligence community doing security, and that work underlies what we did at Stanford. I mean, it motivated that. And so in many ways, the original goal or use case for SDN was security.
So, but now we're back to looking at security, and you're driving that for us. So maybe you want to give us a look at the challenge a bit.
Yeah, definitely. So I think you actually teed it up pretty well, which is, if you look at the macro trends and then you say, okay, if these continue and you go out to the future, then basically all of our time and money is going to be spent dealing with security losses. I mean, that's just basically the problem to solve. And this isn't an issue of spend, and it's not an issue of resources or innovation, right? And we've got huge industries tackling this. So this, to me, suggests that there's something architectural here. And the way that I like to describe it is, if you look at it like a complex IT infrastructure, we really don't have a ubiquitous, horizontal security enforcement layer that provides both context and isolation. So I just want to dig into this really quickly with just 2 examples.
Okay. No.
So one place that we like to put security controls is in the endpoint, right? Well, we'll instrument an application, we'll put an endpoint agent, which is great because you have a lot of context, right? You know files and you know objects, you know users, you know what resources are being consumed, but you're in kind of this untrusted domain, right? I mean, the application is generally untrusted. It's an enormous attack surface. So putting a security control there is kind of like taking the on-off switch to an alarm system and putting it on the outside of a house, right? So another place that we like to put security controls is in the infrastructure, which now you've actually got great isolation. You've reduced your attack surface. It's far away. Even if the edge gets compromised, it won't turn that off. But you have almost no context, right? I mean, IP addresses and ports. I mean, this is, the networking guys have known this forever. They are bad approximations for what we're trying to do. So what I'm exploring is, how can you use the hypervisor to kind of bridge this context isolation divide?
Now, you have a cute way to phrase this entire space.
So I like calling it the Goldilocks zone. Yeah.
No, but Goldilocks, I mean, planets, solar systems. I remember like 3 bears and porridge. What are you talking about, Martin?
Okay, so the Goldilocks zone is a term that was used by planetary scientists in the 1970s to kind of describe the optimal position away from the sun to be hospitable for life, right?
You really are a geek. Yeah,
I am
okay.
nerdy. That's right. It's not too hot and it's not too cold. And similarly, we think that the hypervisor is in this similar position where it's co-resident with applications, it's got great visibility, but it's far enough away to have isolation. So I'm just going to take a couple of slides to describe this. I can't get technically very deep, but I would love to at some other venue. So as you said, we've got this architectural shift to the software-defined data center, right? Which means more and more infrastructure is being pulled into software at the edge somewhere. For example, the hypervisor. If you run virtualization, whether or not you run NSX, you're already running L2 switching and ACLs and QoS. It's already being run in the hypervisor. So the question is how can you use this hypervisor now to extract meaningful context from the edge? Things like users and applications, things like vulnerability posture, like is this compromised or not? And then securely pass that down to the infrastructure for enforcement, right? And so the way that we've done this is we've actually, over the last year, built out technology that will protect guest-level things. It'll establish a root of trust in the guest, and it'll establish a trusted path to pass that information down. So now I can extract meaningful information and use it to enable next-generation firewall or next-generation IDS IPS, next-generation AV. So I do believe we're in a good position to provide both context and isolation.
Okay. So, and against that then, so it's not just what we do, because security is a big topic for the industry, right? So how does the industry participate?
Yeah, so I mean, I think at a macro level, this is a platform discussion because it touches so many verticals. So for example, we have a number of working systems for vulnerability assessment, where instead of remotely scanning a system and detecting if something's wrong, we'll actually sit there in the hypervisor, look at applications to see if there's a vulnerability, and if there is, we can dynamically remediate. Instead of issuing a trouble ticket and having some guy go off and fix it, it'll dynamically remediate it based on the vulnerability posture. So we're not going to be able to do all of these things. So Goldilocks is largely a platform where we're engaging our broad ecosystem partners to build on top of this to enable change across the board, across all verticals.
Well, hey, Martin, this is exciting because not just does it position VMware, the hypervisor, what we've done collectively with the audience here, right in the center of network virtualization, but also a fundamentally new way to attack security.
Hey, I'm so excited to be back with security. It's a lot of fun.
Martin, thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
And very simply put, the hypervisor becomes the ubiquitous enforcement layer. It enables you to address your biggest security challenges in a new and fundamental way. It's pulling together the virtualization of the network to architecturally address security as well. And maybe to pull all those pieces together, let's hear from another customer, from Rich at WestJet, and just see how they are applying both NSX and security in a fundamentally new way. If you could play the video now to hear from Rich.
Hi, Pat, and hello to everybody out there in Interop. Thanks for giving us this opportunity to tell our WestJet story. I sure wish I could have come down and be in Vegas with you guys. I'm sure it's a lot warmer than where we are here in Canada, eh? Okay, how about we get inside where it's a little bit warmer? Oh, darn, let's try that again. Ah, that's better. Gotta love the cloud. It's so agile. Here at WestJet, we made a lot of changes in a relatively short period of time just to keep up with innovation, not to mention our rapid growth as an airline. Over time, we had introduced more and more complexity into our network, and a lot of that complexity had to do with how we were doing security. Also, as we continued to drive towards more integrated solutions, we started seeing an increase in east-to-west traffic. This new traffic pattern exemplified the problems that we were seeing in our data center. In response to that, we started looking at hardware-based solutions, but they were very expensive. Also, it really didn't solve the traffic issue. It simply moved the issue closer to the core, allowing us to throw more hardware resources at it. It also did little to improve our agility. After we were done, it would still take the same amount of time to deploy a service into our network. NSX provides a very agile platform for the network, which is a key to implementing our new approach to security. We quickly learned the advantages of having a virtualized network and how it's one of the foundational pillars towards building a software-defined data center, which is, of course, what enables automation. We also learned how software-defined networking would allow us to configure networks by the click of a button. No more running down to the data center to recable. No more logging on to switches. Since then, we have completed many tests of NSX and have just finished an exercise of deploying our new security model within the framework. Using NSX, we see an opportunity to improve network performance, reduce time and effort required to deploy solutions, all while improving our network security. We are very excited about deploying NSX as the foundation for our software-defined data center. Thanks for including us in your presentation, Pat. Next year, I'd love to be there in sunny Vegas with an update.
And I don't think I could summarize it any better than Rich has done, right? The combination of NSX and new models for attacking security. We've had great progress with the industry joining us in this journey. You know, companies like HP, and we've announced our federated control architecture with them, Palo Alto Networks, deep integrations of their next generation firewalls, right, with the distributed firewall of VMware NSX and a common policy framework. Working with Juniper to address physical to virtual visibility and control structures. And against these, just tremendous engagement and progress with the industry. If you could, just go back to 2010 for a moment with me, because a seminal moment happened in the industry when the number of workloads running virtually surpassed those that were running physical. The world went virtual. In 2012, the network edge went virtual, where the number of virtual ports surpassed the number of physical ports. The network edge is now virtualized. Network virtualization has reached the tipping point. And against that, the virtualization of the network is now inevitable. The benefits are profound. It's an unstoppable force in the world of IT, and it's time to get started today. Network virtualization, the network operating model for the mobile cloud era. And we are delighted to have you join us in that journey. Thank you very much.